There's television. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the May 13th meeting of the Lincoln City Council. I'd like you to join me as I stand for a pledge of allegiance to the flag, followed by a moment of silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you again for joining us, and in accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of business of the City Council of Lincoln is as follows. The clerk will call items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those in opposition. The applicant may then make a short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating their name, address, and whether you are speaking in favor of or in opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last meeting of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date, nor planned for a future agenda. At this point, I'll ask the clerk to call the first item.
We ask those of the general public coming forward to testify to please clearly state your name, spell your name, give your address, and sign in on the sign-in sheet laying on the podium. Testifiers may use either microphone, and there is a sign-in sheet by each microphone. We ask those individuals from city staff who are testifying to please state your name, title, and the department you work for. Also, just a reminder that due to the Memorial Day holiday, the City Council will not meet on Monday, May 27th. Our first item of business is our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 3. If anyone wishes to come forward and speak on any of these items.
Would anyone in the chamber like to speak on these consent agenda items? Seeing no one coming forward.
All right, if not, we can vote on these items. Items 1A and B and 2A and B were introduced by Christensen.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Councilman Christensen, second by Councilman Eskridge. Discussion of the motion? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Next then are our public hearing liquor resolutions. Those giving testimony are asked to come forward and raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, witnesses shall state their names and addresses. I'll call items 4A and B together. They are the application of Go Brands, Inc., doing business as Go Puff, for a Class D liquor license at 301 Oak Creek Drive, as well as the related manager application of Cedric Van. Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Good
Just
afternoon.
state your name and address.
Good afternoon. Jessica Greenwald, Jessica Greenwald. I'm with O'Neill Heinrich. We are at 121 South 13th Street here in Lincoln. We represent GoPuff on application for a Class D liquor license and would be happy to answer any questions that you council members may have.
Thank you, Ms. Greenwald. Questions from the council? Councilman Eskridge.
Yes.
Yes. Tell us about GoPuff.
So GoPuff is a new version of a convenience store. So currently they're operating in Lincoln as just a delivery service for convenience store goods, no alcohol, looking to add on liquor as a new service and delivery service for its customers.
So is there a brick and mortar building I can walk into now?
You can, but we aren't required to have a storefront per city or liquor commission regulations, and so there isn't one. They do have a brick and mortar store where they house all of their inventory, and it's where their employees congregate and so forth, but we are not going to have a storefront.
Other questions from the council? I'm going to go Councilman Camp first, then back to you,
Yes,
Councilman.
Mr. Abel, thank you for appearing. I'm still a little confused. So you're currently a delivery service,
Correct.
and would you continue to be a delivery service, but with the license, it would allow you to deliver alcoholic beverages?
Exactly correct, and we'd still be delivering those same convenience store goods, chips, pop, so forth, but would add then liquor, wine, liquor and beer as an additional good that could be delivered to its customers.
So GoPuff would be selling that as well? They're not just delivering, but selling for yourself as opposed to other places?
Correct. So they would own the inventory themselves. They'd be purchasing it wholesale, own the inventory, keep it on premises, and then it'd be delivered just like any of the other goods that they have.
Okay. And did you say just beer and wine, or?
No, and liquor,
And
the
liquor,
Class
okay.
D, all three.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Councilman Eskridge, back to you.
Okay, so we have ordinances in the community about the sale of alcohol and requiring that purchasers, produce their ID so that we aren't selling to underage persons, and also that we aren't selling to overserved people. So sellers and servers typically are, they take classes and are, have a license to do that. How does that work with GoPuff?
Sure. So each of the drivers will also be employees of GoPuff. They will each be required, along with the managers who will always remain in store, to go through the city training, just as any other server would be. So they'll do the seller training as well.
Okay.
And then they will, keep up with those licenses as they need to. I think it's 3 years that they're required to renew those. And so does that answer your question? I mean, they're going to be going through that training, and then, as far as, the concern for serving intoxicated folks or letting minors get access to the liquor, what they have done and what they continue to do is to match the owner or the folks who order the alcohol have to produce on the app itself their name, and then when the driver arrives at the location, the driver checks the ID, makes sure that the names match identically. They also have an ID scanner, so they'll scan the ID there, and of course, comply with any and all state, federal regulations and laws with regard to the keeping of that information. But so they scan those IDs, make sure those names match, make sure obviously that they are of age and able to purchase the alcohol. The drivers also are able to refuse to sell to anyone that seems intoxicated. And in fact, if there are lots of minors and the driver feels like this is not a good situation, the driver is encouraged to deny the sale. And what GoPuff has done is they will not deny the driver compensation for denying a sale. So either way, they're going to be compensated, and they just want to make sure that they're selling per state, federal regulations.
Thank you.
Councilman Christensen, and then Councilman Camp.
It's also my understanding that the sale has to take place prior to the delivery. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And it will take place on an app.
Councilman Camp, are you ready?
Yes. Interesting, what you're doing.
Business model.
And the alcohol application presents some new questions. What if a delivery person gets to the home and no one's there?
They turn around and bring the product back. So they have to have someone physically present. They have to check IDs. They have to scan an ID. And that's when they can deliver. If no one's there, they'll bring it back to the facility and deny the delivery.
Okay. And secondly, on your delivery people, are those direct employees?
They are. Yes, and they are required to be. Lincoln ordinance requires that.
You
so.
don't break the chain of custody as far as the
Correct.
beverages? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Councilman,
In other communities where this service exists, have there been any modifications to the application, any other restrictions or changes made to the application? And how does Lincoln's model compare to other communities where you do this?
I am not aware of any modifications that have been made. I will say that they are in several different cities right now. They've made millions of sales, specifically of liquor, of alcohol, and they have not had one violation. in any of these cities. So they take great pride in that and want to make sure that there are the controls in place to continue to be able to say that.
Yeah, I'm going to ask one before you. Councilman Christensen asked about the payment process. So
Yes, sir.
I go online or call, I assume both options are available, calling or going online, or is it only one?
I don't know that. I actually, we
But-
have general or assistant or associate general counsel here that could probably answer some of those questions if you have more specific app questions.
So I go online, I decide I want a beverage, I order from you, you ding my credit card, and I find out it was my nephew who's underage that did it instead because I was asleep and he got my wallet. How fast do I get credited back for that charge? Do you know?
That I do not know. We could
What's
ask
the
him
complaint
to,
process?
to
Okay.
join us if you'd like. He's just right in the back if you.
While he comes up and prepares to answer those
Sure.
questions, I think Councilman Camp has a question.
Yeah. You mentioned on here you have, is it 80 different or 70 other locations?
Correct.
And what are all those jurisdictions? Can you name some?
Sure, I know that they're in Philadelphia, and actually Haji might be able to
Oh.
answer that a little bit easier than I.
Bit of fancy stuff there, yeah.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Just state your name and address.
My name is Haji Malumian. It's H-A-D as in Daniel, J-I. Last name M as in Mary, A-L-O-U, M as in Mary, I-A-N as in Nancy. It's a
Thank you.
mouthful. And 454 North 12th Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19123.
Thank you. Let's start with his question.
Sure.
What was the first letter in your last name?
Oh, sure, M. M as in Mary.
Okay, thank you. And thank you very much for spelling
Oh,
that.
no problem.
Okay, so welcome to Nebraska.
Thank you very much.
So maybe you can give just a brief history too of your affiliation with the organization and then
Sure.
how it's operated in other jurisdictions.
I have been with Go Brands for about 2.5 years now. I serve as the Associate General Counsel. I work in the legal department and work on liquor compliance, compliance in general, and new markets.
And as far as the different markets that you're in?
Sure. We are in, at this point, 80-plus markets. I shouldn't say, we have 80-plus facilities nationwide. Certain cities like Philadelphia, Chicago, Boston, we've got multiple facilities in that city. We try and make our deliveries within 20 minutes of the time they're ordered. So it helps to have as many facilities as possible so we can keep our customers happy with a very short time frame.
And just to reinforce what Ms. Greenwald was saying, your track record appears to be without
Yes, yeah, we've
blemish.
been selling alcohol since 2015, and we've had 0 violations since then. It's something we are very proud of. It is something I like to say at these meetings, and so we take it very seriously and do everything we can so we don't have even a single violation.
And are your future goals to continue expanding across the nation, or?
We are. Our plans are to continue to grow as new markets come up that we think fit our model for the convenience of about that 20-minute time frame. If we can find facilities that fit that in various cities, we'll continue to expand, especially within cities we already have a footprint in. That's really what we're trying to do at this point.
And are any of your owners residents of Lincoln?
They are not.
Not so. Are they any in Nebraska?
No, so we are, it was founded at Drexel University, which is a college in Philadelphia. They were 2 roommates their sophomore year. They founded the company. So it's Philly-centric. We have some investors from Chicago, from South Bend, Indiana, some investors that came in early, but I do not believe there's any owners in Lincoln.
Okay, thank you.
And back to my question about
Sure.
the financing model, the
Sure.
payment model.
So if you put an order in for, say, a case of beer.
Yes.
And it was your son or daughter that put the order in, that order would put a hold on your card. Then with the process would go through. Their driver would come to the house, ask to see you. You obviously would be asleep and not be able to present your ID, and it wouldn't be you. At which point the order is immediately denied. On the app, the driver says denied, and then you're credited right back. However long it takes to process that is how long it takes to process. But it's unless you're there physically, the order won't happen.
Thank you. That's helpful to me. Councilwoman Gaylor Baird.
I'll sort of ask the same question a different way. Are there variations in how this model is implemented depending on the city? Or?
There are. It's just little tweaks. Certain cities have different times when we can deliver to, so each city is a little bit different in that. Some cities require W-2 employees. Other ones allow for independent contractors. Certain cities require a retail component, others don't. So it's all the same model, it's the same exact app, it's just depending on local ordinances, we adjust accordingly. But it's, I'd say 90% the same everywhere, it's just those little offshoots.
Other questions from the council? I'm sorry, you had a follow-up.
Staff.
Okay. I think that's all we have at this time. Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Mr. Kirkpatrick, I think there's, or someone, staff
I'm
questions?
sorry, let me just sign here.
Law, please.
Apologies.
Yes, thank you very much for signing in.
Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney.
Thank you. Just a quick check on whether or not it complies with our rules about, businesses that sell alcohol, and sometimes there is a food requirement if it's a restaurant. Would that not be applicable in this case? And
Right.
has this passed all the legal muster for our city ordinances?
The food requirement is with our sidewalk cafe permits. Yeah, we didn't have any reason to recommend that you deny this. There is no conflict with your state or local ordinance that we found.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirkpatrick. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to testify on these two agenda items, 4A and 4B? Seeing no one coming forward, let's move on to 4C and D.
All right, they are application of SMV LLC, doing business as Moonshiners Saloon, for a Class C liquor license at 1101 Arapahoe Street, Suite 103, and the related manager application of Steve Vanek. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Sean Kelly, 2804 South 87th Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, appearing today on behalf of both agenda items and the application. Here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming forward. Are there questions from the council? I'm sorry, Councilman, I looked away. Please, Councilman Camp.
Yes, Mr. Kelly, could you just
Yes.
give us a little
you
thumbnail
bet.
sketch of the organization and so
Sure,
forth?
of course. So this is a prior location that was doing business as Critters. Been licensed since 1990. This is just a simple transaction. The temporary operating permit will be effective May 16th. This is solely owned, local business, one individual in the LLC, but same business model will take place in the same location.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions from the council? We appreciate your testimony. Is there anyone in the chamber that would like to speak on this agenda item? Items 4C and D. Seeing no one coming forward, may we move to 4E?
All right, this is the application of Bourbon Entertainment LLC for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 556 feet by 525 feet in N Street between Centennial Mall and 16th Street on June 8th between 4 p.m. and 12 a.m.
Hi.
No oath.
What's that?
No oath.
Yeah, Sean Reagan appearing for Bourbon Theater, 140 North 1415 O Street, Lincoln, Nebraska 68508.
Mr. Reagan, thanks for coming forward. Tell us about your desire for a special designated license. What's going to be happening at the Bourbon?
Well, this is the second time I'm here in a month, and we have another outdoor show. We just had one on April 26th. It was Brothers Osborne. Did about 3,000 people in that Centennial Mall area, which is the old Rib Fest footprint. Now we're looking at doing a second one on June, I'll have to look back at my boss.
June 8th.
June 8th. Right. June 8th. It's another country show, Turnpike Troubadours this time.
Councilman Eskridge would like to ask you a couple questions.
Yeah, how'd the show April 26th go?
The one on April 26th exceeded expectations. We had just over 3,000 paid. I think Becky, who's here today, she projected, I think, 2,500. So it did very well. This one may not do as good, but there's still, 3-4 weeks left.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was good. I don't think we had any problems. Talked to the on-duty officers who were present. A couple of people got kicked out, but there were no arrests. So everything went pretty smooth. We'd like to tweak it probably, tweak some of the operations, maybe a few more porta potties, maybe a few less depending on how many people show up.
Sometimes we get complaints about noise levels. I didn't hear any in relation to this concert. Does this situation or setup work well for you?
I think so. I mean, this is the area where obviously Ribfest was for so many years. I know Celebrate Lincoln's done stuff there. We tried to start doing shows there a couple times a year. Weather's forced most of them inside. This one was actually the second one in 3 years we were able to successfully pull off. And I don't think the only complaints I heard from some neighboring businesses were the fences either going up too early or blocking some foot traffic too early, which is something that we can change going forward. So, but I think it went pretty smooth. I don't think anybody was upset,
Good.
as far as I know.
No, I usually hear if they are.
Mr. Reagan, Councilman Camp has a couple questions.
Mr. Reagan,
sir.
thanks for coming. I've got a question for you. We happen to have a building next to your location that's for sale. Would you like to buy that so you're weatherproof?
Would that be, which one? Next to the Bourbon?
No, next to your outdoor venue you're asking for.
He's talking about Pershing.
Pershing, yes. Well, I'm thinking about putting a library.
I thought after 20 years I'll get something done before I leave.
Yeah.
Give you a great deal.
It would be, I bet, yeah.
Okay.
A great deal, huh?
Wouldn't have to worry about weather then.
No. Any more questions from the council for Mr. Reagan? Thank you very much for coming forward, and we appreciate your testimony.
Thank you, everyone.
Is anyone in the council chambers that would like to speak on this special designated license?
Mr. Chair, seeing none, I would move for approval of items 4A, B, C, D, and E.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Camp, second by Councilman Eskridge. Discussion of the motion for approval. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Next then are our public hearing resolutions. Item 5A is accepting a report of new and pending claims against the city for April 16 through 30th, 2019. Is there anyone in the chambers here on a claim against the city?
Please come forward.
Good morning.
Well,
My name is Steve Mason.
I was I'm sorry, Mr. Mason. You said good morning, and it kind of caught me off guard there a little bit. Please start again.
Hi. My name is Steve Mason, 7710 Lake Street, Lincoln. And when we had the nasty storms, the nasty snowstorms, I had a vehicle that I'd let my granddaughter drive that was parked in front of the Kaplan colleges in the legal area of parking. And sometime around midnight, it was struck by what we believe was a snowplow. I turned in a claim to the city of Lincoln. The attorney said, no, we don't think you did it, or we did it. So I turned in another response to you, which I'm hoping you've already had and had a chance to read. If not, I can answer any questions about it. I did talk to the officer that wrote the ticket, and it was not written up as a hit and run. It was written up as a property damage claim, and he said there was no doubt in his mind that it was a snowplow that hit it. The officer, or the attorney, said that there is no evidence of materials from a snowplow that would have caused the damage. And I gave you some pictures of pieces of a reflector. There's all kinds of them in the baggie if you want to have them. It's my opinion that it was a snowplow that probably hit the car, and it did total the car. You have some pictures in the information that I sent you that show where the car was parked approximately before it was hit, and it shows where the car would have been after there's no snow there, so you can see that it was off the right-of-way. And it was in the middle of the night. It's a white car in a snowstorm. It's kind of hard to see. So I'm not blaming the driver of the snowplow at all. I just think, the car needs a heck of a paint job now, since the whole trunk is ripped up. And the car is a total loss. So I disagree with the city attorney. Are there any questions?
Yes, that was kind of my line, but thank you. Are there any questions from the council? I'm going to start with Councilwoman Gaylor Baird.
Do you happen to know the name of the officer who responded and thought that it was likely a snowplow involved incident?
Yes, his name is on the police report.
Did he put that in writing?
It was Prather, Prater, badge 1746. In his police report, he said, vehicle hit by snowplow during road maintenance. So I guess it was a guess.
Mr. Mason, do you have anything other than the police report? Any other, like, did you take it to an auto shop? Do they have, as the city attorney pointed out, there was no damage as far as they were concerned. Do you have any other physical evidence that was
Some damage?
paint scrape, paint chips or, plow gouge or something like that, pictures?
I would assume that the information I sent to the city council probably hasn't had a chance to be reviewed.
I didn't have.
I was just looking through my email again, and I don't remember seeing it. I apologize. Roy said he has seen it.
I received it.
Was it an email?
If you'd like to glance at those.
I think while we're waiting, if we could have the
Yes.
city attorney come forward and again, make relevant comments.
That's a brilliant item. Mr. Kirkpatrick, while we're reviewing the evidence, would you come forward and help us understand the city's position on claims against the city? And this one specifically?
Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney. Yes, we had an opportunity to review his claim. We were appreciative of the evidence that he provided, one of which was the pieces of the reflector that the machine that hit whatever it was, that hit the car, left behind, the debris. What I would draw your attention to, this is one of the trucks that the city uses for street plowing.
I
And
didn't know
so
you could do that.
if it would have hit the reflector, two things would have happened. One is that this car, which is an average car as far as height, would have had to been on something to be high enough to hit the reflectors. The second thing is we would have had some damaged snowplows. We would have had snowplows that would have had reflectors broken out. We did not. We know that the snowplow, the truck from the city that went down Capitol Parkway, we know when it went down that evening at 12:48 a.m., and then the same snowplow came down again at 12:56 a.m. We know, how fast it was traveling, and we know that it suffered no damage. There were no reflectors broken out. There was no damage to the hydraulic or the plow, and the driver reports no collision. And so based upon that evidence, our conclusion was, while we have no question that the car was badly damaged by a collision with something, it was not this snowplow, the city's snowplow. And that's why we recommend to the council that you deny this claim.
Councilman Camp?
Yes, Mr. Kirkpatrick, so this is a photo of the same plow truck that was in that area, so you know by records if that was there?
I believe so. I believe that's the same number that was patrolling that street that night, yes.
Okay. And you said that you think there would be damage to the snowplow, the truck and so forth, and I see big bumpers there.
Well, but it would have been hit by the plow, not by the bumpers. This plow that was attached to the front of the truck would have
Okay.
made contact with the car. And so it's a snowplow, you would have had damage to part of the snowplow or the hydraulic system, we think. But certainly, based on his physical evidence, whatever hit that car had reflectors broken out. And these reflectors would have been too high to hit the car, and these reflectors were not broken out. If the reflectors had been broken out, they would have gone to the shop and we would repaired them. And we did review the shop records to make sure we didn't have any city snowplows with that sort of damage.
Mr. Amon, if I may, were the pieces you had there, I thought you were saying those were from your car.
No, these were pieces that were scattered about the car, like a hit and run, for example. There would have been debris and damage from whatever vehicle struck the Buick. There was no other damage, there was no other debris, rather, other than pieces of the car. The car was parked in a proper position in the area that it was in, and it had been shoved sideways up onto the grass by the force of the impact. If you look at the snow furrow, it would appear that the driver on the first pass veered slightly to the right, which would have put it in the car in the path of the snowplow. But if you look at the way the snow was furrowed, and the officer agreed with that there was no doubt in his mind that it was the snowplow that caused the damage. I can't address his the questions of the visors or not the visors, of the pieces of glass or where that came from or not. But I can't see how anything other than a snowplow could have caused that much damage, that much impact, and not left any debris of any kind from the vehicle that would have struck it unless it was hit by a solid object similar to a snowplow blade.
Mr. Patrick, what weight do you give to the police report that Mr. Mason, pardon me, said referenced that it was hit by a snowplow?
Well, actually none. Our conclusion does not match the officer's report. He was not a witness to it, did not talk to any witnesses. It was just based upon his observation at the scene. And he didn't do a follow-up and identify whatever vehicle it was that he came to the conclusion hit the car. I would disagree with his assertion that there were no debris at the site of the impact other than the car. We think the photos show that there was a wheel well piece that was lying by the car, which is a riveted fender flare. Those are not on a city snowplows. They are, however, fairly common as a decorative to pickup trucks, the kind of pickup trucks that you see with snowplows on them that are out doing a lot of business during snowstorms. So we suspect it was probably a privately operated pickup truck with a blade on it that caused the damage and then drove away.
What piece would that have been? I don't recall seeing that when I was taking photographs.
It may have been removed by then.
Point of order.
Yes.
We don't address, witnesses do not address each other.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Other questions from the council? Mr. Mason, thank you for your testimony. What normally happens now is we go through our agenda for some other items, and we'll come back and vote after we get through the rest of the resolutions. And you have a question, it looks like.
I do. Would it be appropriate to ask the officer what he felt or what he saw?
I don't think, I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Kirkpatrick. I would say no off the top of my head, but I don't want to. Usually, sometimes people bring witnesses with them. I'm not sure if it'd be the city's obligation to provide I'll stop talking, let the lawyer talk.
Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney, what I would tell you is that we conducted an investigation. We spoke with Officer Potter prior to reaching our conclusion, reviewed his report, but also specifically called him up and asked him questions about who he talked to and how he conducted his report. Certainly, if this council agrees and denies the claim, as the law department is recommending, it is within his rights as a property owner to file a claim against the city in a court of law and subpoena the officer to come in and testify at that time.
I think the answer is no.
Yeah, I kind of got that.
Yeah. We appreciate you coming forward and giving us a chance to review this. We'll go through the rest of our agenda item and come back and vote on this at the end.
Should you have any questions?
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the council chamber that would like to address a pending claim against the city? Their pending claim against the city. Let me be more specific. You see no one coming forward. Teresa, can we go on to 5B and C?
Yes, 5B and C is approving the Containers on Vine Street redevelopment project redevelopment agreement between TJK Investments and the city, and amending the fiscal year 18-19 CIP to authorize and appropriate $221,890 in TIF funds for the redevelopment project, both generally located on the southwest corner of 28th and Vine Streets.
Members of the City Council, David Landis, Urban Development Department Director, the applicant in this case. A project that you heard last week when we looked at the plan amendment for the container house. You asked me for an image then, and one was given. I thought I'd also show you this and hit the zoom button. This is another version of one of the 4 structures that we built on the location at essentially 28th and Vine. So that's the duplex. There's one on the first floor and one on the second floor. The one on the first floor is about 900 square feet. The one above is about 700 square feet. And they will occupy these 5 lots. The development is done by Chris Sondrup and his family. They've done a number of holdings in the North 27th area, as well as a previous project on 27th, Hartley Flats. The amount of developer investment, which is a little over $1 million, will produce about $220,000 in TIF. The developer needs $130,000 into the sources and uses for site preparation. That means demolition of the buildings that are there, means bringing the utility to the lot line. It also means scraping the project. There is the possibility of using some of the additional TIF for several public benefits, one of which might be some buffering here, some trees along 27th, and the closing of an access point on Vine Street, which would mean more safety on Vine Street when you can reduce access and that location. Mr. Sondrup is here. He'd be happy to answer questions, as would I. I will say that it has been reviewed by the Urban Design Committee, and they found it an acceptable and appropriate use of the city's resources to assist the project in being completed. This is a resolution, not an ordinance, because there is no bond that attends with this piece, so it will be on your agenda later today. Questions?
Councilman Camp.
Mr. Landis, thank you. Some general overriding questions on the, you said there was a little bit over $1 million, but it's going to produce the $221,000 of TIF funds. So could you just walk us through again some of the calculations? That seems like a higher percentage than we usually deal with on projects like this with tax increment financing.
Well, I can tell you that the notes that I was given by Ernie Castillo indicated that that was the working operation that we have. There is a not-to-protest figure, and that not-to-protest figure will be able to cover the expenses for Mr. Sondrup's improvement. In the event it wasn't, we'd have the choice not to go forward with any of the public benefits. So in other words, while I don't have a particular formula for telling you why the 220 appears, Mr. Castillo's good friend was killed in an accident yesterday and isn't going to be here today to do that piece. I can tell you that the not-to-protest number protects the city's interests with respect to making sure the developer provides enough support and taxes to make sure that that responsibility is covered.
But the public improvements are really at the bottom of the list as far as priorities.
Ours are at the bottom. His are at the top, except for the administrative ones that we normally do that are just the matter of recouping the expenses of the administration fee and the like. But his is the first priority from that point of view. The second priority is for the potential site preparation, and the third priority is the utility work in the right-of-way. Any other questions?
Landis, are there other questions from the council? Councilman Camp, did you have additional questions?
No, Mr. Landis.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're
Members,
gonna do
Chris
this nice
Sondrup, 2835 O'Reilly Drive. My wife and I are the ones doing the development. We own CycleWorks in the Moose's Tooth right on the backside. Across the alley. Majority of it for the TIF project that we're looking for would be about 135,000. The additional was for public improvements, as Mr. Landis had mentioned. But what we're looking for was based on our estimated cost. It's probably going to be right around 1.3, 1.4 million for the 4 duplexes.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Congratulations on a very interesting project. I've seen some uses of containers over in New Zealand and after the Christchurch problem years ago and other places. So you mentioned your anticipated amount would be the 135,000. Is the not-to-protest amount the 1.4 million?
I'm sorry?
On the not-to-protest level, what would that be?
You've got me on that. I'm not sure what that refers to.
That means like the county assessor will assess it at something.
Ballpark, yes.
you will not protest it unless it's
No.
over a certain level.
Right.
I was wondering what that level was again.
It's, the estimated costs, I'm guessing, are still going to be in that 130, or 1.3 to 1.4 million range. Originally, we'd expected this to be below the threshold and be much lower when we originally started this project 2 to 3 years ago, and the initial estimates that we'd come up with were putting in that range, but between changes we had to make and cost increases, it drove up pretty dramatically. So,
Thank you.
Other questions from the council for Mr. Sundarup? Thank you very much for coming forward. Is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to speak on this agenda items, actually items 5B and 5C? Seeing no one coming forward, can we move to 5D?
Yes, this is approving a conservation easement agreement between the city and Park Ridge Apartments LLC to preserve the flood storage capacity on property generally located at 501 West B Street.
Good afternoon, Ben Higgins. I'm Superintendent of Stormwater Management with Lincoln Transportation and Utilities.
Mr. Higgins, thanks for coming forward. Oh, you're putting something on? Yes.
Yep. So what we're doing here is Salt Creek has a floodway along it and a floodplain along that. And the floodway normally would be very large, but what they've done instead is narrowed that floodway within the levee banks. And so as a result of that, we have Salt Creek storage areas out there. And each of those storage areas has allowed so much percentage of allowable fill. And so along this area, they wanted to do a storage area, I think, along 501 West B. But to do that, they needed to fill the entire area, which is in the floodplain. And so what we do, as part of our ordinance, we don't allow that unless they can provide a mitigation area. So what they're doing is providing a mitigation area over there on Muff Addition on the third lot there. And so that's what the conservation easement is to save that, to preserve that mitigation area so it can't be filled. So they can fill in that area over there at 501 West B.
Would you mind pointing to your
sure.
illustration and help?
So 501 West B is right here. Okay.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
right here.
I think we might need to zoom out a little bit, yeah.
I don't know how to do that.
there you go.
Okay. So 501 West B is right here. And then where they're preserving it is right there at 8010 Hanneman Drive or Muff Addition, the third lot on Muff Addition.
And Salt Creek is where?
Salt Creek is to the east of that.
Okay.
Salt Creek has a very wide floodplain. I think it's about 3/4 of a mile wide.
Questions from the council?
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Higgins, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the council chamber who would like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing no one coming forward, we're ready for 5E.
Okay. This is approving the updated City of Lincoln Public Art Master Plan for works of art to be placed on city-owned property.
Good afternoon. My name's Lynn Johnson. I'm the director of the Lincoln Parks and Recreation Department. Section 1415.6 of the Lincoln Municipal Code state that a master plan is to be developed for works of art to be placed on city-owned property, and that this plan is to be approved by the City Council. It also states that the master plan is to be reviewed and may be updated at least once during each mayoral term of office. The initial City of Lincoln Public Art Master Plan was adopted in December of 2012. The updated master plan that is before you this afternoon is the result of review during the current mayoral term in office. And so obviously we're coming to the very end of that, but we're definitely getting it before the City Council at this point. This master plan was reviewed and updated in consultation with the Collections Committee of Public Art Lincoln. Public Art Lincoln is our private sector partner that we work with in development of public art projects. The Public Art Master Plan was then forwarded to the full Public Art Lincoln Board for consideration, and I'll let you know that the Public Art Lincoln Board recommended approval of the updated Public Art Master Plan during their board meeting in March. And then I'll do kind of a quick overview of the revisions to the Master Plan. As you may know, the original name for what today is Public Art Lincoln was Lincoln Partners for Public Art Development. They changed their name to Public Art Lincoln a little more than a year ago at this point. So throughout the document, the references to what had been Lincoln Partners for Public Art Development has now been changed to Public Art Lincoln. The historical background information is on pages 3 through 5 were updated to include 10 public art projects that have been placed on city property between 2012 and 2019. Section 3 references artwork and artist selection. It's on page 7 of the plan. And a new paragraph was added establishing general guidelines for artworks that are to be added to the public art collection. Essentially, it states that the collection should include representational and non-representational artworks with a variety of themes, and that the goal is to foster enthusiasm throughout the community for public art. That the artwork should be durable and require limited maintenance. That images or themes of public artworks should be consistent with community values, and that public artworks should enhance people's experience of the location where the artwork is placed. We want to have a good contextual fit between the artwork and where they're placed. Section 4 regarding public approval is on page 8, and this adds a reference stating that the Capital Environs Commission or the Historic Preservation Commission will be responsible for reviewing artworks when they're placed within districts that are under the purview of those two boards. And it also states that we're going to be creating, and we've started this process, but we will be creating new application forms when artwork is proposed to either be loaned to the city or gifted to the city. Section 5 under funding strategies, and this is on page 9, there was new language added indicating the intent for fundraising includes funds for endowments to provide for the ongoing care of artworks added to the city collection. And in section 6, inventories and asset management, both the Lincoln Arts Council and Lincoln Parks and Recreation maintain inventories of public art in Lincoln. The purpose of the Lincoln Arts Council inventory is it's really kind of a public-facing inventory that's intended to help residents and visitors find public artworks within the city. The inventory that Parks and Recreation manages is really for asset management purposes. So we're tracking the artworks, we're identifying when work needs to be done, and then we're tracking when that work is completed. But I would let you know that we do work together cooperatively to make sure that the two inventories are consistent. In section 7, public art opportunities, which is on pages 10 and 11, we added new language kind of clarifying the direction of acquisition of public art for the city collection. One of the ideas that's included is a new art walk, and this art walk is intended to be a collection of pedestrian scale artworks, and Public Art Lincoln has been working on developing a catalog of artists from which that they would approach private potential donors about purchasing or funding acquisition of one of those artworks to be placed on this new art walk. We don't have a location yet identified for that art walk, but it has been suggested that perhaps the new South Haymarket Park might be a potential location for that art walk. It talks about monumental artworks, and one of the suggestions in terms of placement for new monumental piece of art is the new plaza that is proposed at the south end of Canopy Street. One of the plan also recommends, as you know, we placed public artworks in a number of the roundabouts within the city, and that seems to have gone well, and the plan suggests that we continue that practice, and then also that we continue to use artworks as part of our overall placemaking strategy. In section 11, which has to do with copyright, this is on page 12, it's been our standard practice to reference the Federal Visual Artists' Rights Act in developing contracts with artists, and this just states the intent to continue that practice as part of that. There is a simplified diagram for the process of either acquisition of artworks by loan or by purchase or donation that's included in the plan, and then we also updated the map that was included in the prior plan. All of the existing and the proposed roundabouts that we know about are identified in that plan. Districts where public art could be placed as part of the placemaking strategy is also included in that map. And I know that's a lot of information. This was a fairly monumental effort between Public Arts Lincoln and the city, and I wanted to make sure that we updated you on the good work that was done. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I want to let you know that Kathy LeBaron and Rich Verk, who are the co-chairs of Public Art Lincoln, are also here this afternoon, and they're planning to share a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Questions from the council? Well,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to speak on this agenda item? You guys, thank you very much.
My name is Richard Vierk, V-I-E-R-K. I'm at 1230 Fall Creek Road, Lincoln.
I'm Kathy LeBaron, L-E, capital B-A-R-O-N, 6130 The Knolls here in Lincoln. And Richard and I are both co-chairs of Public Art Lincoln. As Lynn just formally said to you, it used to be called Lincoln Partnership for Public Art Development for Lincoln. Changed our name about maybe a year ago to make it more easier for everyone to understand. And this master plan, as Lynn mentioned, had many pieces of it that needed to be updated. Those have been done. You've got those changes. And we voted on this at our meeting in March, and it was unanimously approved. And we just recently met to hear more about the Canopy Street project, which sounds very exciting for West Haymarket.
Just a few facts that may be of interest to the council as far as the collaboration that we've had with Parks and Rec, and it's been very favorable, by the way, and also with the mayor's office and the city. So this is really is a joint effort, and it has been ever since the beginning of it, to actually try and raise the level of awareness for public art and also the quality of public art, to set some standards through the collections committee, to really have a standard of where we put it and how we look at it. And that's been very effective because we have the right people at the table. It's sort of like making decisions with the Parks and Recs and the people who have to care for it eventually, rather than just the buyer, and I'd like to have it next door. Some information that we shared recently with the mayor and some other folks at a special meeting that we had just about kicking off some new plans for funding. And it was mentioned by Lynn that we have decided to stimulate people who would like to contribute, actually, and enable art to be purchased, is to create these sites that they would know where the art was going. It was sort of abstract, and they couldn't focus on what they were buying or where it would be placed. So we really have facilitated these art sites, more or less, and art places, and we'll take to the public, actually, at the end of summer this year, in the fall, to what I would call more of a private audience that would be interested. They may be location close to a business that says, no, across the street, I'd love to do something, or it may be a roundabout. In fact, we've gotten several interest in that. Again, it has to meet certain standards, sizes. We can't have it, arms sticking out in the driveway. But there's, and we also therefore have started a group of artists that fit into those spaces. Just some information, and then you can ask questions if you'd like, but in the last 7 years since PAL has been there, we've done 10 sculptures that are over $3.1 million in value. We've done 3 sculptures on a loan value, which means the artist is willing to loan us the work. And usually if we have the work, it's, once it's in place, they don't want it back. They'd rather sell it. So then we try and find buyers for it. So we're getting smarter. We have created 2 different endowments that have supported, they have of $1.2 million. One supports the tower installation, and then we also have around $400,000, which sits at the Lincoln Community Foundation. That money, because of its size, not enabling a major purchase that we envisioned for some of these major areas, has been now used for loan purposes, to schedule loaning, to the cost of bringing loaned items, et cetera, and the contractual agreements to do that. So we're trying to segment how we do it so we can get more art to Lincoln so that people can see it. So that has created over $5 million of value in those numbers over the last year. So it is a very successful program. I think the community and those that love art have enjoyed this relationship and what it can do for Lincoln. And that's really the goal, is to have our citizens see more art, get up close to it, have a relationship with it, and therefore want more and better art. So,
thank you very much. Questions? Councilman Camp.
Yes, to both of you, and thank you very much for the volunteer work you perform, and I know in Little Barrams you've been very generous to the city. Thank you. I was curious, when you talk about sort of an art walk type situation, are you familiar with what Sioux Falls, South Dakota is?
Yeah, we actually visited.
Yes, both
Kathy
of
and
us
I went
went.
up.
And
It's a little different program, and we, you know, in some senses, it has the elements that we like because it's become a real community effort. And then we, on the other side of it, saw some art that we would say we might want to do more juried selection of the artist. So the concept of the collections committee is really to have an informed audience looking at it, and that committee houses both Sheldon, it houses people in the city who already have an affinity for it and are doing collection. So we aren't trying to replace it, we're just trying to take those individuals and include them in a community effort so we don't step on what they're trying to do. So we've been, you know, there's so much successful art collecting in this city. If you see the, you know, the Torn Notebook on the university campus, and because of our proximity, we want that relationship so the pieces we're buying talk to each other, shall we say. So the art walk is meant to be one where you can have a corridor or a street. You know, that's why it hasn't been selected yet, where you could actually have it as part of the city enticement for people who are here for other things to get close to it and be part of an attraction, really, for the city that you're known for it. Some of the new works we're looking at are actually very, very accessible. There's a tremendous amount of light artists now that where you see cities where you see that reflected on buildings, sites that are already there, that is very attractive evening-wise. You know, these pieces of art that really appear in the evening as a light show almost. So we're looking at other things that would be a different impact on the city as we do it.
Yeah, I just mentioned Sioux Falls because it was just the idea of getting people
Oh,
to walk
absolutely.
around. I think they do like a year at a time and get donors, which seems a lot of administratively challenging.
yes, it was, and we talked to the administrator there, and it is, it takes a lot of time, and as you said, it's only for a year. We would be looking at something that would be more a longer term, and therefore, you know, it may take us longer in order to get it put together as we jury the different artists and select them and find out who will fund it.
Yeah. Well, that's quality over quantity, which is
Yeah.
always better. The other one, too, I know in Indianapolis, they've done quite a bit with public art, and you're probably familiar with that.
There's
as
great
well.
examples out there, and it just is kind of in their own communities what has worked or where it's been started or founded around. So if you, you know, there's some great cities. Seattle has an incredible program, but if you guys can just get a Google and a, you know, a Microsoft and a few people to move, they'll just buy that stuff for us. So it really is influenced by a community and who are the patrons in those communities, how much they can really get onto the public space. I do want to applaud what's been done in the far as cooperation, really trying to make projects work, and Len has been very gracious when we do that.
Thank you. Other questions from the council? Thank you both for your contribution to the community and for your testimony today. I appreciate you greatly.
welcome.
Thank you.
Would anyone else in the chamber like to speak on this agenda item? Teresa, I think that wraps up our public hearing, doesn't it?
All right, we can go into the voting session then. Item 5A is the report of claims, introduced by Camp.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Camp, second by Councilman Eskridge. Discussion? Seeing no additional discussion, would you call the roll, please?
Christensen,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Camp.
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. 5B is the containers on Vine Street redevelopment agreement, introduced by Camp.
So moved.
Second?
A motion by Councilman Camp, second by Councilwoman Raybold. Discussion? Would you please call the roll?
Christensen,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Camp.
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 5C is the fiscal year 18-19 CIP to authorize and appropriate $221,890 in TIF funds for the containers on Vine Street project, introduced by Camp.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Camp, second by Raybold. Discussion? Councilman Christensen.
This is a good thing.
This is a good thing. I think calling the roll would also be a good thing.
Even better.
Call the roll, please.
Christensen,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Camp.
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. 5D is conservation easement agreement with Park Ridge Apartments, introduced by Camp.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion by Camp, second by Christensen. Discussion? Please call the roll, please.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp.
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. 5E is the updated City of Lincoln Public Art Master Plan, introduced by Camp.
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion by Camp, second by Eskridge. Discussion?
Yet another good thing.
Yet another good thing. Thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp.
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Next then, our public hearing ordinances, second reading. Item 6A, Street and Alley Vacation 18005, vacating the P Street right-of-way from the east right-of-way line of 70th Street, approximately 100 feet to the east.
Oh, there.
Good afternoon. Rick Onnen with ENA Consulting Group, here on behalf of Precision Wash Holdings. The area that we're requesting to vacate is a stub of P Street. So we have O Street here, 70th. And the developer is in the process of developing car wash for that site. The area in red is the area that will be vacated. We went through several iterations of site design dealing with setbacks from this issue. We did finally come up with a layout that worked without the vacation, but we found through that process that the city staff would probably as soon not have it anymore because it doesn't seem to have any use, and the developer wanted it. So they have gone through the process and settled on a purchase price, and that's where we stand. I'll take any questions.
Questions from the council? Mr. Awning, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So just for me, a little personal clarity, used to be a steakhouse or something there?
Correct.
Okay. Other questions from the council? Yeah, is there anyone in the council chamber that would like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing no one coming forward, thank you very much for your testimony. Teresa, 6B, please.
This is street name change 19001, renaming Cattle Drive to Discovery Drive between West Highland Boulevard and Research Drive.
Is there someone from staff coming? Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Cass. I live at 7340 Silverthorne Drive, and I'm here as the general manager of NCEE Labs. We ask and support the changing back of our portion of the now named Cattle Drive back to Discovery Drive. Why is this partial address change being requested? It seems simple, but it could keep NCEE from losing clients. Retaining the entire street name as Cattle Drive could have a devastating effect on our not-for-profit business. Retaining the entire street name as Cattle Drive also has the potential to delay product certification applications for our customers across the world. If I could ask each of you, if you're familiar with what certification marks are or not, look on the back of your laptops. You'll see FCC or CCC or something like that on the back or the bottom side. That's the work, the testing that we do at NCEE ends up with a certification mark similar to what you have on the back of your laptops.
They kind of like Underwriters Labs used to be?
Well, it is similar. Underwriters Labs is a safety primarily organization, whereas we provide testing for certification for products, typically in the wireless realm. And you'll know that many things are in the Internet of Things realm, to include many of our local Lincoln customers who have products that are now being connected to the internet via lots of wireless devices. So the process of updating worldwide regulatory agencies with an address change will deplete valuable staff and resources. That's why this name change is being requested. Who is NCEE? NCEE is a unique not-for-profit product testing facility providing product compliance testing. It was funded in 1998 via a $5 million emergency grant as a major part of the state's economic development initiative, in a major push to support manufacturers in the state and the region. Lincoln clients include Kawasaki Motors Manufacturing, Spreetail, Huddle, and many others who have provided letters of support in our application. How does this name change affect our business? It may jeopardize our clients' efforts in government compliance. Even the simplest administrative change or perceived mistake on an application, such as an address inconsistencies, can cause immediate rejection of an application for certification. That's a big problem for our customers as they try to get their products out rapidly to the public. The rigorous certification testing provided by NCAA allows these manufacturers to distribute their products legally. Often these test results are submitted to the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, and other similar bodies worldwide for certification. The FCC and many of these agencies who certify products for sale are often large bureaucratic agencies and typically very slow to respond to change and very likely to reject applications due to address inconsistencies. Why NCAA supports the proposed partial street name change back to Discovery Drive is because it allows NCAA to continue to support our customers' very rapid product development cycles and subsequent distribution to domestic and international markets without interruption. Not changing the name of the street back to Discovery Drive has the opposite effect. Summary, NCAA is a unique not-for-profit. We rely 100% on the revenues generated by our testing activities to keep our doors open. Losing even one customer due to an administrative delay in their certification process could be devastating. Our customers could lose millions of dollars, and the subsequent loss of their business to NCAA would also be devastating. This name change request is not simply because we do not want to notify our 500-plus customers, the Post Office, FedEx, UPS, Emergency Management Services, and others, or changing business cards or stationery. It is a serious issue that we're asking you to address by approving our name change request. And by the way, the proposed change would have no impact on the cattlemen as they would still have the same address. Do you have any questions?
Questions from the council? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Questions? I have staff questions. Should I let the public testify? Yeah. Please come. Sorry about that. We'll get the staff questions in a second. Thank you guys for the help on that one.
No.
Oh, we don't need to. My name is Dan Jameson, Jameson, address 15860 South 54th Street, Roca, Nebraska. I'm here representing Exmark Corporation, a division of the Toro Company, which is an over $6 billion company headquartered in Minneapolis. And I'm here in support of this name change to allow NCAA to continue to operate without having to do all the administrative work. And us as well would be quite burdensome. Council members, I've been engaged in engineering and engineering management in this area in Lincoln and surrounding area for over 35 years, and I don't know of any other public-private partnership that has been as successful, profitable as NCAA has been in support of the area businesses. The figure millions was mentioned. It's much more than that, not tens of millions, but hundreds of millions of dollars of business and associated taxes, thousands of jobs, not just in Lincoln, but in Nebraska and other states where our products are manufactured would be in jeopardy. When we ship products, and our products are shipped by the tens of thousands, when they arrive at a political boundary, political boundary has the right to audit our certifications and make sure that they're up to snuff. And things like an address mismatch could, they have every right to simply stop the product at that boundary. And so I believe that this name change was undertaken in all good faith and with all the best intentions. And I only recently, just last week, found out about this. And so I'm sure there are other Lincoln and area businesses who are just finding out about this impact. So I would urge you to even perhaps survey Lincoln and area businesses across the state and find out just what's at stake here, because I think the information that you needed to make that decision probably just wasn't present or available to you at the time. And regardless of whose fault that is, be it landowners or others, this is a tremendous impact to our ability to do business and continue on, not just within the state, but on an international scale as well. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions for this testifier? Thank you. Now, be sure that you sign in on the pink slip. Give us your name, address. Mr. Cass, I'm not sure if you did that. If you didn't, after the meeting, would you do that, please? And with that said, I'll ask the next person to.
I'm Blake Winter, 1530 East Manor Drive in Lincoln, Winter, and I'm an employee of Exmark. We're located in Beatrice, and I'm testifying in support of the name change, and it will, talking with managers and things at Exmark, we've internally discussed that it will probably double our cost of our compliance testing. If NCE is not available, we'll have to ship our products out of state to have them tested, and also I'd have to accompany it, and I don't want to do that. So a personal reason for wanting to have this name change, and so I urge you to please change the name back to Discovery Drive for NCEE. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Questions for this testifier? Again, thank you very much. Next testifier, please.
My name is Cheryl Mayer, CHERYL MAYER, address 7526 South 36th. I am the Product Safety Compliance Manager for Geist, and I am also urging you to please approve this name change back to Discovery Drive. The change to Cattleman Drive has already affected our business. I just completed a EAC mark for our product for Russia. As part of that, I had to submit the EMC report that was done by NCEE. That mark is, if the name does not change back, that mark is now valid, and I will have to go back and restart the application process. We are already in shipping product with that mark on it to Russia. So this will stop that. We use NCEE because they are local. We are actually a member of them, so that allows us to get in. We can test within a couple weeks. We do a lot of checking. We do not have our own lab, so when we build a product, we run it over there and make sure that it is not radiating too much. Our product actually is an unintentional radiator, so we don't want it to radiate. So our problem is if it is radiating. We use those reports for Australia. We use those reports for the Russia, Kazakhstan area. We use them for the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, for example. We also use them for all of Europe. So it is extremely important to us that we have valid reports, that I do not have to go back and pay for redoing all the marks that are based on those EMC reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Questions from this questions for this testifier? I think I'm more nervous than you are. Thank you very much for your testimony. Next testifier, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Dennis Hedrick, DENNISHEDRICK, with Southeast Community College. Obviously here in support of the recommended change of going back to Discover Drive for at least the section that has been identified. And we would even suggest that if that's confusing, as we see some of the reports from some of the departments, maybe it's time to even go back and change it back totally to Discover Drive. Because I believe, having been with the college when the legislation was enacted, when the center was developed, I think the City Council had it right. You have Innovation Drive, you have Research Drive, you have Discovery Drive. That was a focus point of how do we help grow Lincoln. As you've heard from others, you have many businesses that are working with that entity. We find it as a great facility that we can even work with industry there. So we think it's time to at least change it back to the small portion, or if nothing else, change the whole street back to what it was prior to this change. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hedwig. Questions for this testifier? Again, thank you very much. Would anyone else in the council chambers like to speak on this agenda item?
Hello, my name is Kelly Van Dyne. I'm here with Exmark, who's a division of the Toro Company. I live at 8101 Southwest Woodbury Drive in Lincoln here, and I work at Exmark down in Beatrice. I manage the engineering test center at Exmark, and we work with the Toro Company's test lab as well that's up in Bloomington, Minnesota. And we're able to do a lot of our EMC and EMI regulatory testing right here in Lincoln locally with NCAA because of the certifications that they have with multiple countries and the weight that those carry. If we were not able to use this company that's right here locally, we would have to ship our product a lot farther to test and work with a new company. We really don't want to do that. We want to keep our business here in Lincoln and work with companies here in Lincoln. So I'd like to testify in favor of changing the name back to Discovery Drive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dyne. Questions from the council? Again, thank you for your testimony. Does anyone else would like to speak before I ask for the staff to come up and help me understand a little better? 3, 2, 1. Mr. Carey, would you come forward and answer a couple questions?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, David Carey with the Lincoln Lancaster County Planning Department.
Thank you. It sounds like we tried to do a good thing and there were some unintended consequences. Would that be a fair way to say that?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So what are the consequences of changing the street name halfway down the street as this is proposed?
I think a visual will be helpful in this discussion just so that we have it all on in our minds and in a useful way. So what we have here, we have what is now Cattle Drive until this bend, and then we have Innovation Drive back up to West Highland Boulevard. This highlighted segment, this first block, give or take, is what is proposed to go back to Discovery Drive. Previously, Discovery Drive did go down to this bend, and is now Cattle Drive. This is where NCEE is located, so they are in that first block. We have an intervening research drive that intersects with Cattle Drive, so that would be the logical point where you could start and stop and going back to Discovery Drive, and then have Cattle Drive to this bend, and then it would remain at Innovation Drive through here. So that is what effectively we're dealing with. At the time of the request to change to Cattle Drive from Discovery Drive, our process is to go to the Street Naming Committee. For consistency's sake, at that point, as well as in this application, there was a recommendation from that committee for denial, and it was based mainly on the fact that we do not like to, nor should we try to, be in the game of changing names on our streets. It just causes confusion, and it can, in some instances, perhaps cause some problems with emergency response. That is a big overriding factor here. In this case, what we have is we have very limited property owners. We have, even with the change from Discovery Drive to Cattle Drive, 4 individual lots, all owned by the same individual and company that were impacted by that change. We basically were discussing the limitation on the impact here. What happened here was that we had tenants in this existing building on this lot that did not become aware of the name change until after the fact. And so what we have here is a proposal that is also trying to limit the impact by only having that one lot be impacted by the change back. While this is not good practice, I would not recommend doing this, but if we're trying to solve the problem, we have compelling testimony here today. I think that this is a way to address the problem.
Councilman Camp.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. So in summary, are you and the others on the committee willing to have this essentially one block area then renamed back to Discovery Drive?
Well, I'll be clear that the street name committee that has multiple departments involved, they officially have the recommendation of denial, and that is based on their standards and what they are dealing with and trying to be as straightforward as possible with our street naming throughout the city. What I'm saying is that in trying to address the issue here, which brings in these other factors of how their businesses are run and the impacts on the name change, I'm recommending that you take that into consideration. The fact is that in a perfect world, we likely should not have made the original change. That is really the the crux of the issue here. We did reach out to the Cattlemen's Association. We did get a response from them. They are, in their words, not supporting nor are they contesting this change, but nor they did not also provide the option to go back to Discovery Drive. I don't believe that they are in support of that whatsoever. So we have multiple interests here that we're trying to weigh the interests of.
Would it feel good to say "I told you so" to us? Because we probably deserve that.
I'm not going to say that, but I think that is a lesson for us all. I mean, moving forward, that this is part of the reason why we don't want to do these changes.
How about I informed you thusly? Councilman Camp.
I recognize that there's something of a dilemma, but I also recall the cattlemen and what they've done and the significance of their organization. I know over years I've encountered street name changes, and I recognize it's not the option you go to first, and we've had other examples. I mean, Kmart that is now gone and so forth. But I think at the same time, it's very critical that we representing Lincoln work with businesses like this. I mean, both of these are significant organizations, and I know I've seen some interesting signs in other countries that seems a little confusing, but I think for the significance of these two organizations, I think we should be respectful, and so I would encourage you to think in those terms.
Other questions for Mr. Carey?
I mean, I would just say that I don't think it's issue of respect. It's kind of balancing public safety and wayfinding and practical matters. And we did try to honor their request because we were unaware that there were any objections. We were making our decision with the understanding that there were no problems or no one was contesting it. And unfortunately, that proves not to be the case. It's not a great situation to be in at this point.
Big whoops. Other questions for Mr. Carey? Mr. Carey, thank you very much for your help on this one. I think while we were talking, somebody else from the audience would like to testify?
Hello, my name's Brad Hars. I reside at 4200 South Street. Some of you have heard from me about this previously. We would just like to solve a problem that sprang up and it was quite a surprise. It's no secret to anybody in this room that there are several streets that continue through Lincoln whose names change from block to block to block. I was going up 66th Street today when suddenly I was on North Cotner, and a few blocks later I was back on 66th. Going home this afternoon, I'll go down Capitol Parkway until all of a sudden I'll be on Normal Boulevard. This is not an uncommon thing in Lincoln or any other city that I've been in. I would just ask for your support and change this name back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for this testifier?
Councilman Camp. Are you saying the whole thing or just this portion?
I'm sorry?
You're asking us to support?
I'm asking you to support the name change back to Discovery Drive.
For the whole
segment or just this portion?
Our interest is in maintaining our physical address as Discovery Drive. If it's in the council's interest and desire of the city to change the whole street back to Discovery Drive, that's above my pay grade.
I doubt that, but thank you. So,
well, thank you. Anything else?
Thank you. Not at this time. Thank you very much. Please, if you would sign in. I'm sorry. You said ask me something else, and I dropped the ball on that one. Mr. Cassie, if you would come back and help us with that too. Anyone else in the chamber like to speak on this agenda item? So that concludes the public.
They can have rebuttal if they want for any reason.
Yes, you're right. Mr. Cass, usually we have the person who presents, which would be you, have a chance for rebuttal. Would you like to address any of the other statements by any other testifiers?
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I wasn't prepared to do that, but
this guy, he's on top of it.
Mr. Camp, thank you very much. No, I appreciate your consideration. It is a dicey situation that has come around, and we're doing our best we can to be a good neighbor with our friends, the cattlemen. And so we'd appreciate your consideration for this name change request. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Teresa, that ends our public hearing portion on ordinances on second reading.
Yes, we can move into the voting session. Item 7A is amending the pay schedule for the employee group whose classifications are assigned to the pay range prefixed by the letter N by creating the classification of interpreter or translator introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Raybold, second by Councilwoman Gaylor Baird. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. 7B is amending the pay schedule for the employee group whose classifications are assigned to the pay range prefixed by the letter C by creating the classification of data analyst, introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Raybold, second by Christensen. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. 7C is amending section 3.16.010 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to increase the local option sales tax rate by 1/4% for 6 years to pay for street rehab, reconstruction, and new construction of arterial streets in all quadrants of the city, introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Raybold, second by Christensen. Discussion, I'd like to recognize Councilman Camp.
Yes, I'd just like to make the comment that this passed by our voters in the primary election. In the future, I think something of this significance really should be on the general election where you have more voting tallies, so it's not a very small number of people that make a major change for the city. And I recognize that everyone has the right to vote. Unfortunately, historically, on primary elections, we don't have as many voters turn out. So I just think it'd be prudent for measures of this type that those really belong where you're going to get the most voters weighing in whether they agree or disagree.
Councilman, thank you for those comments. Councilman Christensen.
Well, my follow-up to that would be, this date was not selected by the city, but dictated by the state.
To meet this deadline.
Correct.
It could have been a different deadline, but yeah. But I don't think that's a valid excuse. That's correct factually to meet the October 1 deadline. But, okay.
All right, other discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. 7D, Street and Alley Vacation 19002, application of Nebraska Horsemen's Benevolent and Protective Association to vacate a portion of South First Street and a portion of South First Street right-of-way on property generally located at South First and West Denton Road, introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by, motion by Raybold, second by Camp. Discussion. Dropped the ball anyway, didn't I? Call the roll, please.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Couldn't do it.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 7E, annexation 19002, annexing approximately 76.76 acres of property generally located at South 70th and Rokeby Road, introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Raybold, second by Camp. Discussion. Please call the roll.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 7F, change of zone 19005, application of Rokeby Holdings for a change from AG Agricultural to R3 Residential on property generally located at South 70th and Rokeby Road, introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Raybold, second by Camp. Discussion. Please call the roll.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 7G is approving amendment number 2 to the annexation agreement for the Rokeby Road Coalition between the city, Rokeby Holdings, the Catholic Bishop of Lincoln, Carlton Talcott, Milton L. and Carol Talcott, SSAR LLC, Cal Ruby LLC, the Carol Kruger Company, Lincoln Federal Bank Corp., Milton Talcott trustee and Carol Talcott trustee, Talcott Land and Cattle, Southview Inc., and Milton L. Talcott trustee to reflect the adjustments to the property located within the Wagon Train watershed on property generally located at South 70th and Rokeby Road, introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Raybold, second by Camp. Discussion. Please call the roll.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. 7H, ordinance amending Chapter 5.38 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to rental dwellings, hotels, motels, and rooming houses to include rental dwelling registration and increased causes for doing internal inspections of rental dwellings, introduced by Raybold.
So moved with questions for staff.
Second.
Got a motion by Raybold, second by Eskridge. And I see there's a demo. I'd like to have the staff come up and answer some questions. I do want to acknowledge there are members of in the audience that are having a, physical display?
Demonstration?
Yeah, I don't want to use demonstration. They're sharing their opinion with us. Mr. Blaha, I think Councilwoman Raybold had some first, and I do have some questions, and we'll see where it goes from there.
I do have some questions because I think there was a lot of misinformation that I'm hearing from people out in the community, and I'm hoping that you could address a few questions on a number of issues. But the first one is, can you talk a little bit about the proposed registry in the ordinance, where it is asking for a fee for those single-family rentals and the duplexes? Could you talk and explain that in a little bit more detail?
Sure. This is, once again, this is a registry only. It is not intended to function like the apartment license program, in that there is not a inspection component to the registry. It is information gathering only for the properties that meet the definition in the code, primarily single family and duplex rentals that are offered to the general public and involve a lease. There's more detailed language in there, but that is practically speaking the purpose of what the registry requires. The purpose would be, like I said, information gathering for the benefit to city staff is to have that information available for contact when we get called out for complaints and they end up in with a violation notice, that we have access to somebody who can quick access and contact information to somebody who can make decisions and affect the necessary changes or improvements, repairs, what have you, to remedy the violation.
So some people think it's $15 per person per month. They think it's like $15 per unit. Could you clear that up, what it means for the single family and the duplexes?
The $15 is the one-time charge for the registry for that owner. So if I own a single-family house and offer it up for lease and for rent, I pay $15 once to get that information on the registry, and if I own it 1 year or 50 years, it's that $15 for me. If I sell it to another owner and they choose to use it as a rental, then they would have to register, would be required to register in their own name or contact person with an additional $15 for that person.
So it's $15 one time.
Yes.
And then, you know, also in the ordinance, it had certain triggers.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of misinformation swirling about the triggers. Could you talk a little bit about what are the current triggers in place, and then explain, maybe clarify what these additional triggers in the new ordinance will do?
Sure. The current Lincoln Municipal Code Section 5.38.045, so that's the current municipal code. Item number A1 is the first trigger for interior inspection, and it reads verbatim: when 2 or more different units in a house with 3 to 12 units have received a housing code complaint within a year of each other requiring action as directed by the building official. So that is an example of the existing triggers. The the rest of the triggers just are different for different size of buildings. So for apartment buildings with 13 to 24 units available, then the requirement is 3 or more different units with violations. And for 25 for buildings with 25 or larger, 25 or more units, the threshold is 4 or more different units that receive a complaint with an accompanying violation. Those are current triggers in the current code that already give us the authority to do interior whole building inspections.
You know, I forgot to ask you, backing up on the registry, someone had raised an issue. Is the names of those on the registry, that those folks that pay that one-time fee, are those names made public, or how is Building and Safety going to handle it? And how do they handle those who have the license and permit for units that are 3 or more? Is there going to be a difference, or how is that registry for those single-family and duplex going to be handled?
Currently, for the existing apartment licensing, the name of the applicant, which in some for that apartment license, which sometimes is the owner, sometimes it's a management company, the name of that is already available to the public through Citizen Access. The name of the owner is already available, and in some cases, when they choose to add their phone number, that is also available on their in the existing Citizen Access portal, which would serve as the registry for the existing apartment licenses. For this proposed registry, we would more than likely choose to treat it similarly to that the apartment license. We hadn't discussed thoroughly internally what information we in terms of contact information, email or phone number at this point, but the address and the name of the registrant would certainly be part of the published portion. Does that answer that?
Yes,
okay.
it does.
And then back to, you had asked previously about clarifying the new proposed triggers.
Correct,
okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yep. So like I said, those the triggers that I discussed earlier are part of the existing code, and we do those now. The additional or the proposed additional triggers, the first one deals with duplexes. If we have 2 or more interior complaints that result in violations on one of the units, then that would give us the authority to go into the other unit as well. Then the other, the next new proposed trigger is when one unit in one building and a unit in a second building under the same ownership would each receive a complaint that results in a violation. The proposed trigger would give us authority to do an interior whole building inspection on both of those buildings. The next couple are would not often be used, but they are proposed new triggers. When a complaint that results in a violation ends up with a court conviction, meaning the owner did not fix what they needed to fix, and it got to the point of us having to refer it to the law department and then law-seeking prosecution through the courts. If that were to happen, that would give us authority to do a top-to-bottom in that whole building. The next trigger would be when an owner refuses to accept service of the notices of violation. Again, doesn't happen very often, but if they're refusing that service, that would give us the authority to go in and do the interior inspection. And the last trigger, which really isn't a new trigger, we are just introducing language that formalizes it in the event that an apartment licensee fails to pay their renewal fee. After the initial notice, after the expiration date and then after the available 30-day extension. If through all of those they still have not paid their renewal fee, we effectively expire that apartment license, and they would be required to start over with the licensing procedure. And they would go through what's called the COC process, and they'd have to get a whole new top-to-bottom inspection.
Thank you. If there are no further questions of staff, I would like to make a motion that we delay the vote on this item for 1 week to May 20th.
Waiting for a second.
Second.
A discussion, and I'm going to recognize.
I'm going to make a motion to delay this until the 10th of June. And the reason being is there are community organizations that have not had the opportunity to fully participate in this process, and they have equal claim on the attention of this council. Now, Rioma is meeting this Thursday, and I would say it's probably likely that they might be able to come up with recommendations they would want to forward to the council by the 20th. However, the Realtors Association of Lincoln, their entire leadership is in Washington, D.C. for the whole week. And I've been in communication with them today, and they indicate there's no way that they can bring forward to their membership for a vote any kind of position on changes they would like to make to this and have it to us by the 20th. So I'm going to have a motion that says to the 10th of June.
Second.
Well, we're actually,
Hey,
there's
we're
another motion on the table.
I'm just bringing it up right now so you know that that's going to be on, that's an option.
Well, I'd like to address the motion, if I may. I think, first of all, I want to thank all the participants that came to the discussions that we had last week. I thought it was very helpful. I was grateful for the wonderful dialogue. I think there's so many things that we agree on this issue. We agree that we have to do everything we can to preserve our existing affordable housing stock. I think that's what we all agree on, and want to take more steps to make sure that we can take care of that. We also agree that this is not going to address the problem of us creating more affordable housing stock. We need to have more. We see the deficit of 5,000 units in our city of Lincoln, so this is a step in the right direction. We also agree on the fact that we need to have more dialogue. And I love the fact that Rioma and the realtors and renters together have agreed to say we want to have the dialogues. And certainly south of downtown, Economic Development Organization agreed we need to have a task force to deal with the more substantive, long-term ways of creating more affordable housing for our community. But we need to crack down on those problem properties. We've heard enough compelling testimony, not just last week for 3 hours, but we've been hearing testimony from folks that are concerned about the quality of our existing housing stock. We've had folks come and testify before us for 2 to 3 months on this very issue and the deficiencies that we currently see. We all agree that there are so many great landlords out there doing everything they can to take care of their properties and take care of their tenants, and we applaud them. And we all agree this is the thing that will help us put in more triggers that will crack down on those bad properties. So with your support, I'm hoping that we will have some fruitful dialogues. I've reached out to the realtors and I've reached out to Rioma asking them, let's come forward, please come forward. I have an amendment to remove the restrictions on and delete the language on that 60-mile requirement. But I also want Rioma and the other organizations that are clear stakeholders to come forward with their resolution, their changes, their amendments that are going to make this better. This is a small step, and we've talked about that it's not really a dramatic change in anything that we're doing right now, but it's a very effective tool that we can have additional triggers to target and tackle and improve those problem properties. And so I'm hoping this week we'll continue those dialogues, that will come forward with those amendments that are going to improve this ordinance. And then after that, I would like to see us all come together for a task force to come up with incentives to help landlords solve some of their problems with their existing properties in the urban core, but also what can we do as a community? What can we do as a city to be better promoters of creating affordable housing on the perimeter of our city, in the urban core? What can we do as a city to promote more density? What can we do to make and reduce regulation that gets in the way so that you can do your job and provide more housing for more people? This is the dialogue that we need to continue to have, and I'm so grateful that so many of you have started that and are now committed to going forward with more dialogue and coming together to tackle the bigger issues that we have to resolve.
Thank you. Before I lost complete control of this, I had one more question for, and then we'll talk about your motion to amend her motion. I think it's what you did. Chad, thanks for coming back. I appreciate you. We talked about this last week. We had a big public hearing. Everybody said they wanted to talk. Did you get a chance to talk to any of these organizations and people? Did anyone reach out to you? Were there conversations?
Not many. We had some email dialogue back and forth with other city staff that I was part of, but I haven't had increased phone dialogue with folks other than city staff and a couple of you folks.
Okay, thank you. So I appreciate that. Other questions for him before we had a motion and a second by Councilwoman Raybould.
Before he leaves.
Yeah. Okay, Chad.
Mr. Blaha, would you define violation, please?
Inspector shows up and on a complaint and finds a violation.
If there is an item or a facility in the unit that the inspector, in his or her judgment, is not in compliance with the housing code, which is chapter 20-something of the LMC, or chapter 5 of LMC, that's a violation.
So I don't have a smoke detector in a bedroom of a duplex that I rent, well, let's say the current law under a multi 3 or more, then I would be written up for a violation.
Yes.
Okay. So if there are no batteries in the smoke detector, it's not operating, that would be a violation?
Yes.
So if there are 2 or more,
there are 2 or more
violations under this.
That happens twice.
Mm-hmm. I'll say there are 2 different units in a 10-plex that have that 3 units. I think you said it'd be 3 violations, then you'd have an inspection of all the building and then.
Within a 12-month period.
Within a 12-month period, and the only reason we would be in any of those units is if it was a result of a complaint. Because we do not get into the interior units on the annual inspections.
Okay. But without the smoke detector, that's a violation. There are other similar things. Thank you.
Yep.
So we had a motion by Councilwoman Raybould that was seconded, and I forgot to annotate that. Then we had a motion to amend by
Amend the delay to change it to the from the 20th.
Was it a 1-week delay? You amended it to change it to the 20th of
to the 10th of June.
And that was seconded here.
And
so
I want to address that.
So we need to talk about the motion to amend first.
Motion
Well,
to
we
get laws input on
We
how
just
to-
have the motion to delay.
Okay.
Mr. Christian, if you don't want to talk about that motion, I'd like to.
Go ahead. Well, I will talk about it as well, but.
Well then, okay, you moved
Okay,
it, so
well,
you
first
have the
of all, I think
opportunity.
we lose nothing in a delay. What we gain is the ability to form a community consensus, which is extremely valuable.
Councilman Campbell.
Right. Well, I think that the process and the testimony we had last week showed that there were a substantial number of individuals on both sides of this. This has been pushed forward so quickly that you can't even call it a process when it was just 6 days before it was heard by the, in fact, 5 days before City Council, when a lot of these organizations were there. You're talking about a process. We asked last week, is this the first step? And people say, well, this may do it. Now you're talking about more and more steps. I think that, as Mr. Christensen just said, let's encourage a meaningful dialogue to get consensus. I think you've made a number of points that, yes, there's a willingness, a desire to take measures that will help on affordable housing and so forth, but this is somewhat directed that I think that the landlords in this situation are given something of a presumption of guilt, and they're not having an opportunity to participate effectively in this process. And so, you know, and I don't see one more week is going to allow a whole lot, but giving it a little bit more time to bake it and involve the people in the process, because the landlords weren't involved in this process till 4 or 5 days, 5 or 6 days before it was introduced.
Councilwoman Raybold, and I think you're getting prepared for my question, aren't you, Mr. Kirkpatrick? I'm going to ask about procedure, because I got a couple of motions for.
Go ahead.
Please come and answer it before she speaks. I think I let this get out of hand, and we've got too many motions on them.
Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney. No, I don't know that you did. You had a motion to amend to a time definite, which would be next week, and that is an amendable motion. So it was amended. I think there was amended. Let's see. And
So Raybold moved to delay action to 5:20, seconded by Eskridge. Then Christensen moved to delay action to 6:10 and seconded by Camp.
yes. And so now you've got a motion to amend her motion to delay to a time certain. If it passes, then the motion is then to delay until June 10th. If the motion fails, then you move to a vote on her original motion, which was to delay until next week. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. It does. Thank you very much. Councilwoman Raybold?
Well, the reason why I came up with 1 week is because we've already initiated some great conversations and great dialogue, and we've also tossed out ideas about some amendments. And I'm thinking that if we could continue that dialogue, I know Rioma has a meeting, I believe, this Thursday, that I would love to attend, or maybe Chad or John Carlson could be there to talk about how we can make this a better ordinance for everyone and get the input then. And on next Monday, May 20th, if we have not made substantial progress, I certainly would advocate a further delay. But I'd like to see us working more cooperatively and collaboratively together to come up with some solutions. And I know that the Rioma had sent a number of letters. Their members had, and thank you for the letters, but they also in their letters said that they have some proposals and amendments that they would like to present. And so I want to be party to that. I want to hear the amendments that you have been talking about, and I think if we have Chad or John Carlson there, you can knock it off them and see what their reactions are this, or what is the impact it has. But I'd like to continue to move forward. And if we haven't made progress, then there is no reason why we shouldn't have another delay on May 20th, vote for a delay and for another week or two. And I certainly would support that, but I would like to have more opportunities to engage and hear the amendments that you are considering.
Councilman Eskridge would like to add to the conversation.
Thank you, and I appreciate Roy's sentiment about, you know, wanting to build consensus. I think that's exactly, you know, what needs to happen. Selfishly, I've got a week left, and I really would like to have a hand in deciding this if we're ready next week.
That's it. Councilman Christensen, you get to wrap up.
I just know that the Realtors Association of Lincoln wants to participate, and because of the absence of their leadership in Washington, D.C. at a national meeting, they don't feel they can achieve that kind of consensus building before the 20th. And that's the reason for my motion to delay until the 10th of June. I think they're an important organization for our community, and they deserve to be heard, and they have as much claim on this council's attention as anybody else in our community does.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Camp?
I appreciate my colleague, Mr. Eskridge's comment, and I wish we could do that, but I feel like there's been a gun put to the head of several organizations here, and short notice and just another week is not sufficient time to have a meaningful dialogue without having just pressure on you. And I don't think we have that right to do that to citizens and groups of citizens.
No public comment.
I'm sorry?
The gentleman in the back and I were making eye contact. He wanted to be part of a public comment, and I was informing him at this point in our stage there is no more public comment.
And I think that we can get a good consensus. We can get good legislation, but pushing it with another gun at their head for 1 week is not the way to do that. You're just going to make people feel very uncomfortable, and you're going to create an adversarial environment.
Can we get a different analysis?
Yes, I was going to say, I don't agree with that analysis. I think this is an issue that has been discussed for many, many months. We have an ordinance before us that will address some of the issues. But the dialogue has to continue no matter what happens with this ordinance. And I am grateful for those who expressed a willingness to do just that. And so I don't consider us rushed on this at all, but I do want to create a sense of urgency based on some of the concerns we've gotten, and even more concerns over the weekend of people sharing their real-life experience stories. And it's not about going after the good landlords at all. It's about addressing the real problems that are still out there that we collectively can solve, working together. And I think 1 week, getting some great ideas, working together will keep the process moving along.
Okay, I'm going to call to it for an end of discussion. Now we're voting on the motion to amend to change the delay from the original motion of 1 week to June 10th.
And this was delay action.
With, yes.
Delayed
With public
action,
hearing.
Yeah, delayed action.
but no public hearing.
Correct.
Oh, you don't want,
Well, we've already had public hearing.
We've already had public hearing for 3 hours.
but you're,
Of course, this council could gift.
Do you want public hearing?
Gift something to the new council on the 10th of June.
I mean, we're talking about some many major changes. I don't know how you could do something like that without featured public hearing.
We've
that's
had
open to the
public hearing for 3 hours, and we've had additional testimony from several groups that probably collectively added at least another hour. I'm open to the dialogue, John.
Hang on, I'm gonna go with Councilwoman Gaylor Baird.
Changes
You'll-
without, anyway,
I'm sorry.
it's just.
Councilwoman, would you like to add?
Every single person up here thinks that having more dialogue makes sense. We've had a council member say that they would like to have at least one more opportunity to consider weighing in before leaving the council, and I suspect you wouldn't mind that as well. If in fact we aren't in a good place next week, I'm more than open to an additional delay. I wonder if we could just put this just 1 week delay and resume conversation. And if in fact it isn't done, we should reopen public hearing because the new council members will need to be able to get educated on this subject.
Any additional comment or discussion? So, Madam Clerk, just so I'm clear, I'm going to ask you to call the roll in a minute on the motion to amend, which extends the delay until June the 10th.
Correct.
Would you call the roll, please?
Christensen,
Yes.
Eskridge,
No.
Gaylor Baird,
No.
Raybold,
No.
Schob,
No.
Camp.
Yes.
Motion lost 2-4.
Okay, now we go back to the original motion, delay for 1 week.
Correct. And this is action only.
Yes.
Okay.
Christensen,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Camp.
No.
Motion carried 5-1.
Okay, so we delayed that for 1 week. Everybody needs to get their ducks together and get in a room and talk about this. And if we don't get it solved in a week, we're going to come back with another request for a delay. Got it? Come on, guys, we can do this. We're a great community. We can get this done. We just need to work together, and we need to do it more affirmatively. Now, thanks for letting me wind a little bit. Would you go to resolutions on first reading
Yes,
now?
Our resolutions on first reading are items 8A and B. Our pending list date certain is item 10A. Anyone wishing to address the council on a matter not on this agenda and not scheduled and not planned to appear on a future agenda may do so at this time, since it is an open microphone session.
She said this is the second meeting of the month, so we have an open microphone or a public comment portion. Is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to speak on any item not on the agenda today nor planned for a future agenda?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, yeah, we might have to stop you mid-testimony, but
Denise Arnold.
hi, Denise. Good to see you again.
Hi. Sorry, I was such in a rush, and I still am now, because a friend of mine from California is visiting, and I have to get a lot of things done. But
You got 5 minutes.
I want to make sure that man told me the truth. Did you say no to the tenant thing?
No, we delayed action for 1 week,
For
so
1
it'll be
week.
on next week's agenda.
We haven't decided yet.
Okay, next week agenda.
Yeah.
I'll see you then. Have a good day.
Thank you. Was there anyone else in the council chambers that would like to address us with a matter not on today's agenda nor planned for a future agenda? Wait, no,
Are you just voting?
No.
Or
Next
hearing
week.
people?
No, next week is
Next week,
action only.
just voting next week.
Oh, then maybe I should speak
I'm sorry.
Cannot
Can't
speak about
speak
it.
on this issue
That was my
because-
fault. You only get one shot after a public comment. You kind
Well,
of,
it's not that, this is on our agenda. In public comment, we do not allow testimony on items that are currently on our agenda.
Uh-huh.
And the
Okay.
people have testified on.
They have. Okay. I hope this Gestapo thing does not go through.
okay,
Mr.
thank
Chair,
you.
I'd move for adjournment.
Motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
I'm-